Hello and welcome back to Connected with Eva. My guest today is George Kakas, an artist and actor who somehow also finds time to volunteer in sea rescue and work in sustainability. He's one of those people who blends creativity with real-world impact. And today we talk about purpose, having multiple creative avenues in life, and how to manage them all. What is work-life balance for you? Because this term is thrown around so much. Everyone has an opinion about it. There's so many quotes about finding the perfect balance. I don't even know if that's actually possible, but what has that journey been like for you?
Yeah, good question. You can look at other people's lives and you can assume they have balance, or maybe they give off that they have balance. And I'm sure that my social media sometimes looks like I've got a good balance. But put it this way, I don't find sleeping very easy. I basically feel like I have quite a few passions, whether it's been music or being on a stage in general, including acting. Also the humanitarian aspect with sea rescue, and then the sustainability side. I think everyone has like similar kind of, baseline sort of default passions that they want to keep up, but then finding the right amount to be doing it at a good level. I think people talk often about having a balance that is daily all year round, right? A lot of quotes and a lot of like influencers will get online and they'll say, every day I wake up at 4 a.m. and I have breakfast by 5 and I'm in the gym by 5:30. Like, there's no way anyone does everything every single day. We're not robots. We're not machines that can work on such strict schedules. For those that do, awesome. But, I don't know what that means internally about their character. Are they satisfied living that? Do they never wonder what it's like to maybe step away from routine and things? And I think I've caught myself many times where I've been in a routine that I haven't wanted to get out of, and that's been quite stressful. Internally, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with stepping away from a routine that you're enjoying or that you've been a part of for a very long time. Letting go of that need to be in a routine has been helpful for me to balance all my sort of different roles. But I'm not going to lie, there are many times where I think that if I just picked a path, maybe by now I could have been an expert in one of them, or I could have been maybe more than what I am in one of these paths. There's that sort of imposter syndrome that I have to play with all the time, really. And yeah, it's not comfortable, but also it does allow for a want to learn. So whenever I walk into a room and I don't feel like I am the expert in the room or whatever, I try to tackle it with less intimidation and nerves. And I try to just remember that, everyone in the room is there sort of with their own focal point on themselves. They're not thinking about me and what a lack of knowledge I have or whatever. They're just thinking about themselves. And that's just an opportunity for me to be there and learn. Work-life balance, it's like the term success. What is that? It's relative, I think, when you find a good equilibrium, nice peace, where you feel like you're not anxious. Work-life balance is basically the point where you're still learning, you're still keeping healthy habits in place, like your sleep, your diet, your exercise, not even exercise, like just moving, just keeping your body moving, but also still stepping towards any goals you might have. And that doesn't need to be tomorrow. It doesn't need to be in the next 10 years. And I think it's important to be fluid. Everyone says go with the flow. And I know that's a lot easier to say than it is to do sometimes. I think less judgment on ourselves when it comes to stepping away from routine or stepping away from our goal for a day or two. Internally, I believe we're still all children. To some extent, we all have this idea of an inner child, and that inner child can be vulnerable sometimes. We may feel more emotional some days. We don't know why or whatever. But that inner child also still wants to explore. Is still curious about the world. And if you're stuck in a single sort of routine, then maybe that inner child isn't feeling too good. Maybe it's feeling a bit locked up. Less judgment. Find the flow. Give yourself flexibility. And hopefully things will get better and better as life goes on.
While you're doing different things, there will be moments when one of these things will be completely forgotten. And then even if you're super, I'll use this word, even though it's not the greatest word, successful in one of them, you're thinking about that other thing that's, behind in the background, just dying. So your personal life is also that there's no separation because you're all these different multifaceted things? And how do you differentiate from personal life if you don't have one linear thing? That's difficult.
I often say how envious I am of people who have that one thing that they just know they want to be an expert in, and they're just full throttle going for it, you know? Yeah, like I said, I think this has been a bit of an issue for me, like having this sort of more lateral vision and trying to make sure that all my moving parts in my life are sort of constantly okay and moving. But as you said, sometimes, one thing might have to go on the back burner while something else takes the podium. And I often feel this between music and acting specifically. I mean, up until like 2 weeks ago, I hadn't sat in my studio for about 2.5 months, 3 months to make any music. Now I'm back in an inspired place. Now that I'm in this kind of zone, when I think about acting, there's less pressure on it. That sort of light pressure keeps bouncing around from the different topics depending on, just the time in life.
When I started the podcast, it was the second thing that I do after modeling. It is difficult to separate all these things that you do. But at the same time, when you do them and you shift your focus from one to the other, I feel like satisfaction level can increase and self-fulfillment, because it's almost like, how I said before, maybe one thing is not working out for a moment. Then you focus on something else that you're still passionate about, that you're still actively doing. And in that aspect, actually, when you're doing these multiple things in your life, there is a level of sustained growth, because you're never actually going to stop if something is not working. You'll start growing in the other thing you do. So there will be that sustained growth that's not stopping, because you can focus on different things.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I've got friends who are, my partner included, classically trained singers. And in that world, the competition is so high. Unless you dedicate yourself properly to it, you're seldom going to get an audition, let alone a role. And I've heard my partner often talk about how a lot of her colleagues, herself included, sometimes the job gets attached to their own egos. And so when the job's not going well, they also don't feel good about themselves. And I'm sure this doesn't apply just to singers. I'm sure it applies to a lot of people who have that sort of, that one track goal. And, if it's not going well, then they might be thinking, oh, well, that's also my self-worth. That's not going well. That's something that I'm quite lucky. I have almost these other like insurance passions.
But they do feed into each other. If you're doing well in one thing, or if you're actually giving all your attention, you're giving inspired attention to one thing, that's your energy in regards to all the things you do. Because if you're focusing on something that's not working well, that's your energy. Again, that's your energy about everything in your life. Energy is everything. What you put out there is what you get back. Even knowing that doesn't mean that I don't have like down days. I'll have like down weeks.
No, 100%. 100%. I think the older you get, the more you see this, what you put out comes back, not just in the sense of karma. This is funny because I was saying this to a friend of mine the other day who's doing very well right now as a composer. He's playing international stages, collaborating with big artists, and he's doing really well. And we were agreeing that especially when it comes to anything creative, in this case music, you may spend a whole day on an idea. At the end of the day, you're just like, this is rubbish, I'm chucking it out. You may spend half an hour on a project, and that half an hour is more conducive to what you're going to put out at the end than that whole day was, right? But on average, literally the more time you spend on creating music, the better it becomes. So you sometimes listen to music and you think, how has this person or this group or this producer thought about all these things? You're hearing that as a snapshot. So when you listen to music, you get this like moment of inspiration from like a second of music that you hear. And you're like, wow, there's so many amazing ideas here. But actually what's more likely happened is that those have been layers that have been added onto over weeks, months, maybe years in some cases. There's some artists that take years to release an album. The more time you give an idea or a project, even when it's not going well, you can be trusted to sort of shape it into the idea that you want at the end. I think that's kind of a bit of a metaphor for how you live your life as well. Like, some days are not going to be great. It may feel like some days you're putting in 150% of your effort and it's still not going well. And then other days things just seem to go well. And, things just falling in place and opportunities are coming and you're doing good things and you don't have to try so hard. I think if you just kind of keep at it, on average, you're still climbing, you're still reaching closer and closer to whatever goals you have set or towards whatever stage of life you want to be in.
I feel like sometimes we actually forget things are being built almost energetically in the background when we actually do things. When you're putting the work, when you're putting the energy, like you say, you might not really see a result. And then one day you see like a lot of different results, but because it's in the background, things are happening when you're consistent with things. So there's this whole thing, why isn't this happening right now? I've been working so much and I've been like, whatever. And then it's because it will take like another moment, but it will happen. You can't necessarily know when the result will show up. This is not up to us. It's not up to us. Work is up to us. Consistency is up to us. Not every day, like you said, not every day will be the same level of energy. Growth is a spiral, right? And like that's the same thing with consistent work and everything. Well, I'm just showing here because you can't see like very little grain of effort. Some days that's all you can do and that's enough. And then there will be days where you do a lot. And that's consistency. It's not the same level. Like I said at the beginning, it's not the same level every day. It's what you can do based off how full or empty is your cup that day. That's all you can do sometimes.
That can be really hard, right? To not judge yourself and to not be cruel to yourself and be like, oh, you're lazy, you haven't done anything for this project today, you haven't gone to the gym today, you know, these things, they kind of play in your head. It's just so important to be able to zoom out. There's so much going on in our lives, especially at this age, I think, when you're in those sort of early 20s, you kind of got the energy, you've got the youth, you're kind of like working things out. Then you get to this like weird time now between like 28 onwards into the 30s where things feel really high pressure. Sometimes you kind of just need to zoom out and see where everything is, but also zoom out and just see another day as like just another day in your very long and rich life, hopefully. When you zoom out and you think about your lifestyle in general, are you moving closer to where you would like to be in your life? I think that's quite helpful when it comes to this work-life balance situation. It's helpful to zoom out and think, where was I a year ago or two? Am I closer to where I want to be? Or not even am I closer? Have I created more opportunity for myself to get to where I want to be since 2 years ago? Because yeah, today maybe I feel like shit. I haven't done anything. I haven't done any work. I've just watched TV all day and I feel shit about myself. I haven't showered. But, there'll be a day, there'll be a few days next week that I'll be doing really well and I'll feel really energetic and I'll be really productive with the things I want to be productive in.
That's very interesting that you're talking about this specifically because I'm thinking myself, there's a lot of cool things happening. There's obviously the dopamine coming in from these things. And then I might have like 2 days of doing nothing, which is normal. And then that dopamine is not going to be present. So I'll feel the gap between these two experiences. And it's not like it's a bad thing that I'm not doing anything these 2 days, but it's just because that dopamine hit was so high when you have like something really cool happening, like that natural dopamine is just like fireworks. And then you feel the gap.
As you said, it's not a bad thing to be doing nothing, but I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily to be feeling like that either, to be feeling that difference, because you don't have light without dark. You can't possibly know that you're having great days and feeling motivated when you don't know what the opposite feels like.
That pressure and emotions going up and down. I think obviously social media has a big impact in that. And what's your relationship with social media?
Again, this has been said so many times, but social media has been obviously life-changing for everybody. In many ways, it's fantastic. It's a beautiful way that, we all keep in touch on a regular basis. 20 years ago, people who, when they left school, you'd likely never see 80% of your class ever again. Now, there are friends from school that I'm in touch with every day. We may not see each other for a couple of years, 3 years, but as a group, we're all still interacting. We're growing as a group together with the growing social norms. That's really great. But obviously, there is an overconsumption on all social media platforms, which isn't necessarily healthy for us. And that's not just to do with like your screen time and, how long you're on a screen for, but it's about the kind of norms that you're building in your head as well. People talk about life balance and things, and they talk about, getting up at 4 a.m. and sleeping 1 hour a day and, just working all the time. And that's like supposed to be normal for some reason, or not normal, or that's supposed to be the idea of success. And if you can't do that, then you're like a failure. Or when it comes to like body image as well, before social media, it was already pretty problematic that you were bombarded by adverts all the time about what your body should look like and many other things about how many aspects of your life should look like. Now it's like in our pockets, in our hands all the time. Social media could be a very beautiful thing. It's a beautiful tool that we've created to stay interconnected and to share ideas and to communicate. But it's also handing over a lot of power to this device in our pocket. I'm constantly aware of like how much time I spend on it. I try to see the beauty in it as well as try and tell myself off a little bit.
It's almost like it knows what will make your brain rot the most, and that's what it shows you.
Yeah. And why does our brain rot, right? It's because it's like so instinctive for us to just focus on it without even trying. It's done such a good job at like finding our specific niches of addiction. I think it's done such a good job at doing that. But obviously, that is a problem as well. It's kind of taking advantage of people's vulnerabilities.
At the same time, like say, it just opened up the world so much that I've made friends on Instagram. I meet people on Instagram. I message people on Instagram. It's this incredible gateway to opportunities.
So there's pages that are trying to normalize things like scarring, or, like in terms of body image or stretch marks and things like that. There's a lot of people who are like just posting themselves in their natural sort of self. Yeah, it's just so nice to see like people really being conscious of Instagram's bad sides and trying to like equalize the kind of content that's on there in terms of how it affects us, trying to be a force for good. A lot of mental health stuff on there as well. I think I talk about mental health quite a lot with the work I do with the Sea Rescue, but also just because it's a very interesting topic for me. So half my ads on Instagram are for BetterHelp therapy.
They could sponsor me if they want.
But it's great, because it should be normalized. I come from Cyprus, which is a beautiful place. It's a lovely place, lovely people, but it's still quite backwards in some ways. And one of those ways is access to therapy and availability for mental health services. I mean that on a sort of sociological level. Like a lot of people have a need for it, especially in more sort of repressed places and more sort of traditional cultures. People need to have a way of talking about things more.
In our society, there's a lot of distraction in our lives around us, in our immediate vicinity. And that distraction, it is actually overwhelming to the brain. Like that kind of conversation really helps separate yourself from it. It's probably not something that's so normal because we as humans should be in, like a small community and interact within that community. Community is not really so promoted in, Western society. So there are all these disassociation from where actually we started as humans. And that creates a lot of confusion in the brain and a lot of disassociation from ourselves, which brings the need for therapy, for any kind of talk, really. And in London specifically, there are a lot of places that promote events to actually go meet strangers and like be friends with them. And like I went to one for coffee the other day, which is like make friends and it just strangers based off common interests. And actually made a friend, which was amazing. In our brains, the way we structurally work, we need that in-person interaction. It's like all good to do things online, but we have the need for an in-depth personal connection.
Yeah, and you mentioned about community and where we are in the West when it comes to our relationship to community, because community doesn't necessarily need to mean just friends and people with similar values or whatever. It's not just that. It's also the idea of having your family close to you as well. And that applies to not just when you're growing up and just, in your 20s and things. I don't personally have kids, for example, but I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was saying how his family are nearby within a 20-minute drive from them. And it means that they can keep trying with their careers and keep, they're also in music, and they're also, busy with gigs here and there and everywhere. And they have no idea how they would have been able to do everything unless they had support of, well, as I said, it takes a village to raise a child, right? And yeah, he's like, I think we've normalized moving away from our communities and making that like an indicator of success. But actually, are we happier?
I will have to say I started going to a choir last April, and it's one of the best decisions I did for myself. It's so lovely, and it's a community actually, because it's been going on for 10 years and it's in this one neighborhood in London. And it's like the same people, they all know each other. Like you say, community is so important. And when you're in a community in any capacity, you get this feeling of satisfaction, of closeness. It just fulfills you to an extent that no career goal can fulfill you like that. It makes you feel so safe and centered in something.
You find a home in a community, however big or small. And I think what's also beautiful about these kind of micro communities, like you said, whether it's a choir or in my case, it's the lifeboat station, small community of people, everyone there in the choir and in the lifeboat station, they have very different walks of life, different ages, different religions, different cultures, economic backgrounds, political backgrounds. I think social media is always kind of pushing how divided we are, right? That's the news that makes the headlines, right? The most divisive news, the most surprising news is what makes headlines. So it's really nice to see in these micro communities that people always find more to have in common because they do, rather than what they have uncommon, I think this is very prevalent in today's world, and something that I'm quite passionate about is people finding commonality with each other, because there is more that we share than we don't share. Again, like I said, we all have this inner child deep down. We all have the same basic need for love and fear and belonging, and in all our lives, it's just been guided differently, and we were just a product of a different system, but still we have these basic needs which we all have in common. And I think it's such an important reminder when you go into these micro communities that we do have things in common that can be respected and loved, and it doesn't need to be about our differences. There's a friend of mine actually a few years ago that said to me there was like a social experiment done in this regard. They'd taken a very left-wing woman and a very right-wing woman, and they put them in a room, and they basically said to them, yeah, you believe in this kind of politics and you believe in this kind of politics, debate about it. And yeah, they kind of got talking, and obviously they eventually got into arguing after about 5-10 minutes, and just being like, how can you possibly believe this, you idiot, this, that, the other, the typical stuff. But then they were both told that both of them have just had babies, and not just that, but you also both had miscarriages on your first rounds. They looked at each other with this like, oh yeah, that's like something that I would rather talk about with you. The social experiment went on for a bit more, and they came out as friends. The story was that they maintained their friendship after that. But I think it's just an example that, the big headlines tell us to separate ourselves, and there's so much more that's connecting us that's so important. As we said before, it's about actively searching that in people, and that's how you build a community around you, finding the commonalities with people. Because
we often don't express an interest in the other person, as in who they are in their core. You're a stranger, so there's no commonality here.
Yeah, imagine if you could have a little tag when you walk past people, like a little digital tag. This person has been through this kind of trauma, just like you have, has the same sort of family situation as you. It doesn't have to be bad stuff as well. It could also be really nice, positive stuff.
They're super fun at parties. We judge as human beings. That's like a natural reaction that happens consciously or subconsciously. So sometimes you almost don't allow people to be people, to have this kind of what, karaoke? You as a person, I'd never have thought that. Let's say we assume someone is serious because they have a corporate job. They could be the most fun person. And if we cross paths with them on the street, there will be that, just association with them in corporate. Thought closed, nothing else.
And vice versa as well, right? Someone might have a really fun career, or, someone could be, always seeming amazing on the outside. And then as soon as they enter the home, they're a lot more, I feel like that about myself, to be honest. I think on the outside, I don't perform, but I just I get the energy of my surroundings. And as soon as I enter my house or like my safe space, I kind of just go zoom.
We're not one layer of a person. And that's the thing. Sometimes what I post on stories, for example, is just me laughing, and I just laughing a lot, like in every story. Well, also because it's such a contrast to my main grid on my modeling page. It's almost like you're creating personalities, right? Because we have so many personalities. How can you have an idea of someone without meeting them? And even if you meet someone, it takes so long to get to know someone deeply.
I mean, okay, here in Brighton, it's a smaller place. It's like between 250 to 300,000 people. It's kind of small enough that you see familiar faces when you walk around. But I feel like when you go to London, it's so big. It's there's 10 plus million people there.
I'll tell you a funny story about that. When I moved to London in 2009, the year after, I was walking on Oxford Street. I'm in front of John Lewis, and I saw my psychology teacher from school back in Bulgaria.
Did you say hi?
To be honest, in London, I have some random encounters with people like that.
It does happen, though. You're right. It does happen in London where you bump into people.
It's not seeing the same people.
Yeah, it's not systematic.
Time. No.
So that's the difference, I suppose, right? When you're in Brighton, I kind of know that when I go for a drive or for a walk, there's a good chance I might see someone that I recognize. Having said that, it's still like big enough that, you're always seeing new people, and that's great. But because it's smaller, I feel like there's a bigger sense of belonging. There's a bigger sense of community. There's a bigger chance that we're all fed the same energy from the city. We're all fed the same news about things that happen. There was a fire the other day in one of the gardens, nothing damaged or whatever. Everyone knows about it. I mean, that's just classic though, isn't it? The smaller a place, the higher sense of community without having to really search for it too much. But when you're in a big metropolitan city, whether it's New York or London or LA or anywhere in the world, really, there's just so many people that you can't possibly spend time and energy with every person you see trying to connect with them, So it almost goes the other way.
You can't even spend time with your friends because it takes like months to arrange to meet them.
I know. I try to organize friends coming down to visit me and stuff, and just like, yeah, all right, see you in 6 months.
It's kind of like, can we meet for coffee this weekend? Well, in 2 weeks it's kind of better because at the moment I have this thing going on, and then next week I have this thing going on. So it will be ideal if we can do coffee in like a month's time on a Thursday morning at 10 a.m.
Everyone's busy, right? Everyone's just so busy. I saw a meme the other day that was like, it's this guy sitting on his veranda with nothing to do, and he's like, it gets to that time in your 30s where you have a weekend with nothing planned. It's like the best thing ever to have nothing planned for the whole weekend. And I can just sit here and do nothing. There's no pressure on meeting anyone or doing anything. I'm like, yeah, so true. It's so nice to be able to sit down on not just a weekend or any day and just be like, yes, nothing planned. Like there's no pressure for me to be anywhere or be anyone or do anything.
To be honest, for me, a weekend doing nothing is a planned weekend, which means that that's my plan, so I'm busy.
I see.
It's funny because I get energy from interactions, but because of what we do, right? We interact with so many people, and that's amazing. But then I do need a lot of alone time as well. It's like a funny mixture.
Again, that's part of balance, right? Actually, it goes back to the very first question when it comes to work-life balance. What we also mean is work-life and personal balance as well. I suppose that's part of the life, but energy doesn't come out of nowhere, and I think a lot of people probably feel similarly to you where, we're interacting with people so much and you just need time to figure out where you are. Maybe not even figure anything out, just not be doing anything outward, just feeding yourself with the energy that you need. These things that feed you, because there are things that you naturally gravitate towards.